Writing files. I'm going to jump to MonoDevelop, and I've got the first file project here. I want to start by building it, not running it. Then I need to look in the file system, open containing folder. It has created a bin subdirectory and a debug subdirectory in that, and you can see that we've got these two files here, the executable and a debugging file. In particular, there is not a file sample.txt. Let me go back now, actually run this program, and there's no user interaction. This is just creating a file. In Windows, we still get this console popping up, but I'm done with it. What I want to do now is go back to my file window, and sample.txt has appeared. And although this file does not show in MonoDevelop, I can open it to sample.txt, and there we are. This program is writing our first file. Now let's go back and look at the program. We have an extra using line. Not only are we using system, but system.io whenever we're doing stuff with files. And we mentioned that we considered files to be streams. There is a new type here, StreamWriter. It connects to a file that is going to be created in the file system, and here we're giving it the name, which of course matches what we found in that directory. And we're using the same notation we did here with the random class. This is the usual way of creating a new object using the keyword new. So we create a StreamWriter, and I will generally call my StreamWriter writer. What we have next, you will see, the method name you should recognize, WriteLine. This is the same as we've had with console, and it works very similarly. You are writing a stream of characters to the screen. When you write to the console, we're basically doing the same thing, except they're going to this writer, ultimately to this file named sample.txt. And here we're just writing this line, and of course that was, if you remember, the first line of the file that we looked at. And then I write another line to the same writer, and therefore ultimately the same file, and that was the second line of the file. One thing that is different here than dealing with the console is that it is important to close the writer. This is an important method to end up with after you write to a file. Writing to files is way slower than writing to memory, and differing operating systems handle things differently, but it's likely that when you say to write to a file, you don't actually immediately write it to the file system. It may be stored inside the computer and it waits to write a big chunk. And if you never say close, you may never write that chunk. Another reason to include the close method here is that this then makes that file accessible to the rest of the operating system. And when we're done with it, we presumably want other programs to be able to use it. So this is important and very easy to forget. You can do all kinds of elaborate things and put beautiful things in a file, and then you can go look for the file that you created when you run the program, and you may see nothing. In that case, you probably forgot a line like this. A caution with StreamWriters. I gave a name sample.txt that didn't already exist there in the file system, but if a file had existed, I would have destroyed the old contents and overwritten them. So make sure that you're only writing to the file you want to write to. Later in this chapter, we will discuss the current directory. The way MonoDevelop works, the place that files are put, if you don't give anything other than a simple file name like this, is in the current directory. And I showed you in the file system where this was. It was not in my project folder directly, but in the subfolder bin, and then the subfolder debug under that. That will be consistent. We'll discuss later how to put the files in some different folder. The other thing to note is that this folder was not shown in the solution pad here, showing the first file project. All of these files do exist underneath the directory called first file, but this does not necessarily list everything there. And generally it doesn't list the bin subdirectory. Hence, I had to go to the file system to show it off to you. In this case, we just wrote a simple single string each time with the WriteLine method here. But just as we had when we were writing to the console, where the WriteLine method allowed for the string format operations, you can do exactly the same things with the StreamWriter versions of WriteLine. And also, if you don't want to put a final new line, you can use write. Again, we can put a format string and braces and embed things inside of where the braces sit, just as we could when we did the console.WriteLine.